Wow, so Eric Weinstein is making some bold claims saying that the promised UFO disclosure or semi-disclosure or whatever is supposed to happen in the next few months, promised by the likes of Garry Nolan and James Fox and others, like John Ramirez, former CIA officer. Well, Eric Weinstein is comparing this to Lucy in the Football, and he is saying this has happened numerous times before, and that this UFO disclosure or semi-disclosure that's supposed to happen imminently is all a sham. So let's talk about it. Get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please subscribe, share on social media, and let me know what you think in the comments below. And of course, I'm sure you're all familiar with Lucy in the Football. Here's Charlie Brown trying to get that football. You can do it, Charlie Brown. You're going to get it this time. Nope. Well, so that's Charlie Brown trying to get the football. And this is what Eric Weinstein, famous PhD and public speaker on scientific matters, is saying about this supposedly imminent U.A.P. UFO disclosure. He says, "Let me kill two birds with one stone. Garry Nolan, is a serious scientist and a professor at Stanford. I know him and enjoy talking shop with him. But you will note the pattern is exactly similar to the one I described as Lucy in the Football on Joe Rogan." Number one, the bullet points. Outreach from credible USG, ex-USG contacts. That's part one of this pattern that Eric is describing. Number two is bizarrely confident grand claims. Okay. Planned disclosure on a timeline, which of course is what we're seeing. People saying it's going to happen within a few months. John Ramirez is a little bit more, I don't want to say pessimistic, but he's putting it out either this year or next year. But Garry Nolan and others are saying, it's going to happen within the next few months. So that's so we have outreach from a credible USG or ex-USG contact, and of course Garry Nolan is affiliated with the government, and so is John Ramirez. Bizarrely confident grand claims. Well, I guess any form of UFO disclosure is bizarre, right? And that is certainly a grand claim to make. Now, in fairness, they're not saying this is going to be the defining moment of UFO disclosure, but they are saying to expect something big that will further their conversation in the same way as 2017 did. The 3 videos released by TTSA, Lou Elizondo, and Chris Mellon. Those are 2 of his points. Outreach, bizarrely confident claims. Planned disclosure on a timeline is the 3rd. 4 is last minute change in plan. So this is what he is predicting is going to happen, is that, all of a sudden something changed and we couldn't pony up with the information. Sorry, guys. That's what he's saying is going to happen. And he is saying, lastly, that this is a repeated pattern across groups. He says at least 4+ instances of this behavior to 3 or more visible PhDs in different areas. Okay, very interesting. So he's seeing a pattern of this happening again and again. And while I can't point to specific incidences, I can certainly recall this seeming to have happened before, where UFO disclosure is dangled in front of us and it's promised to happen just around the corner, and it never does. Is that some sort of psyop on the government, feeding false information to these people, saying it's going to happen now, and then when it doesn't, they look foolish, or it just slows down the conversation because people are expecting something to happen that doesn't? I don't know. But Eric says, this is what I can say. I choose not to say more, but this bizarre pattern is invariant. Garry is not making this up, nor is Sam, nor am I, etc. He says, very disappointing, but it is newsworthy that this is being done to U.S. PhDs. Why? I cannot for the life of me tell you. If it weren't for the credibility of those involved, I would think it was a prank. But I suspect Garry wasn't weeks away. Because Garry, in the recent interview, and I think even before then, he has said that he was weeks away from actually getting to work on a UFO, a physical craft. He was going to be taken to this object and he was going to be allowed to see it or potentially even work on it. I think that was the whole idea. He's a scientist. He was going to work on it. And I don't know if that means he was going to be part of the reverse engineering efforts or simply to document it. I would love to know more about that proposed event. But of course, it never happened. Garry was, had this carrot dangled in front of him that he was going to be allowed to work on a UFO, and it was just weeks away from actually happening. And then the plans were changed, and it was taken away from him. So that is certainly one example of this pattern that Eric is describing. And Eric says it almost feels like a prank, but obviously this is substantially more than a prank, right? If this is indeed a deliberate pattern. So he says, I suspect Garry wasn't weeks away. It feels orchestrated, never to happen. Feel free to draw your own conclusions, however. So, very, very interesting. Now let's see what Garry has to say here.
Effectively, we'll have material, literal physical material to evaluate, to analyze.
Yes, 100%.
100% again. Okay.
It's there. It's there. I can say this. I was.
It is there. He's not wrong.
Working with a group about 7-8 years ago, and I literally got within a few weeks of gaining access to one of the objects. And when the people who didn't want us to gain access to it found out about it, they pulled some bureaucratic administrative tricks and snatched it away.
It's wild. And so now we have you.
So that would be the opposing view, right? As a counter to what Eric is saying, it's not a deliberate a pattern, or it's not a deliberate pulling of the football, as in the Charlie Brown example. This is people trying to get disclosure out, or at least, I don't think in the case of Garry and the UFO that he would have been allowed to talk about it, but maybe something would have gotten out. I really don't know what the logic behind that would have been, because he wasn't really publicly talking about this stuff at that time, unless there was some sort of implicit understanding that if he was allowed to work on it, then he would. But let's just, use that as an example. So he was, had this dangled in front of him, and other powers that be, the ones that are trying to suppress this topic, stepped in and did not allow that to happen. So, instead of a deliberate psyop, we're going to dangle this carrot or this football in front of you and then snatch it away from you. It's, some people trying to further the conversation by actually sincerely offering you the carrot or the football, and another group coming in to snatch it away. So it's not one Lucy, it's two Lucies. One sincere, one not sincere. So, that could answer Eric's question, potentially. Let's see. Eric also says, note added, I expect that there will be targeting of me for speaking out about this pattern. Well, I'm not speaking out against you. I think that's a very interesting and an insightful comment that you made. I don't know if that's true, though. But he goes on to say, I have zero interest in this topic historically until the unsolicited outreach. simply a detailed understanding of the bizarre history of the anti-gravity, quantum gravity era of 1953 to 73 in the modern string theory stagnation era of 1984 to present. So is he saying that there was some secret development there in the 50s to the 70s, and then that there was a public stagnation but some private development? I mean, that seems to be the logic of the whole control group idea, right? The secret space fleet, all that kind of stuff would have required some massive revolution in technology, likely gifted to us by the beings, if indeed we are working with the beings, as I believe the evidence points to, and I've made several videos about that. But yeah, Garry says he's under no NDE or clearance arrangements of any kind. I have so far not publicly disclosed where it comes from as professional courtesy, despite my irritation. And I suppose he's talking about this outreach. You know, they came to him and tried to kind of bring him on board the UFO disclosure train, and to some extent they did. I think that he at least acknowledges that this is a real phenomenon now, but he is very skeptical of much of the circus surrounding it. And I don't say circus really demeaningly, but it is kind of wild and crazy out there. So anyway, it's a really interesting story. Oh yeah, and Garry actually responds. So let's listen to what Garry Nolan responds. He says, Eric and I don't disagree on this. This can be the biggest hoax of the millennium for all I care, though I know what I saw as a young boy. So they may be talking about the actual existence of the phenomenon. He says, though I know what I saw as a young boy, so that's my foundational data point. I am getting the boxes on my checklist checked while having lots of fun at the same time. And of course, Garry Nolan has said that as a child, there were beings in his bedroom and they put him to sleep. So that is what alien contactees or abductees experience later in life. I think he saw a couple of UFOs. So putting those pieces together, I think it's a lock that Garry Nolan is an experiencer and an alien contactee or abductee, which is interesting that his career path is what it is. Has that been guided in any way, or was he chosen because that would be his career path? Because the lore surrounding abductions, many of them, one of the explanations is that they are not abducted, as in they were not taken against their will, but before they even came into this life, abductees chose to be abductees. And they are not abductees, they are contactees, because they have chosen this experience for themselves and they have chosen to help in whatever this project that the beings are doing is. They are helping in furtherance to that agenda. And, that is the story. That is the narrative that has been put out there, certainly by the beings. The beings have told people that. Point blank, they have told people that. And I want to say that people have also discovered that through a near-death experience, hypnotic regressions. So very intriguing. Let's see. And have either of those two guys or anybody related chimed in, rather be squidding. Have you ever felt at times you were being recruited into a religion, that they were trying to see how much you'd believe without the evidence? And I think he's referring to Eric's comments about the outreach, where people in the UFO disclosure movement reached out to Eric and try to get him on board. And again, to some extent, they did. At least he started to take this stuff more seriously instead of being the very annoying, and I have to say ignorant, debunker that he was. So anyway, I'm not seeing any more comments from Garry or Eric or anybody related. If James Fox, or anybody like that had chimed in, I would be curious to see what they have to say, but I'm not seeing anything like that. John Ramirez, yeah. So anyway, but that's a really interesting observation from Eric that, this could be a repeated pattern and a deliberate repeated pattern. Because, of course, I have seen this before. UFO disclosure just around the corner has been promised before. What if this was a one party doing this, dangling disclosure in front of us and then yanking it away? If there was only one Lucy instead of two Lucys, what would be the logic? Is it just to dangle hope in front of us so that we don't pry under all the rocks in the interim? Would that be the thinking? So to slow down our own investigations and etc. We have this hope that it's coming, so we're not going to try harder to get to the truth. And then, of course, they have a change in plans, and that fades away. Would that be the thinking? Or is there some other rationale behind that? Some psychological thing, trying to confuse people, get people at odds. Some people arguing that it's going to happen, some that it's not. Get people fighting with each other, and then they lose sight of the actual goal. Something like that, or something else altogether different. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to see what you guys have to say about this. It's a fascinating idea, fascinating subject. Are there one Lucy? Are there two Lucys? Are there 1,000 Lucys? Are there any Lucys? I don't know, but I'm Charlie Brown, so let me know what you guys think. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. I sure would appreciate it. If you have, if you have not hit the like and the subscribe bell, please do so. Hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos. Join me on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. I would love to see you guys there. That'd be super awesome. And if you could share this video on social media when it drops, that too would be very groovy. And there are plenty of other videos on my channel for you to check out. Until next time. Yeah, this is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.